It's August 20th, 2023. I went to the Red Cross this morning. I listened to the canon law. Um, it's always so like somber when I go. Um, it's not like this happy, rejoiceful place at this point. I mean, it's on one hand, it's I guess sanctuary for me and my child based on what's going on in the local area, that I'm trying like I don't know how to make heads or tails of it. um, when I think of my nano position inside of this, and then I think of a micro, and then I think of a macro, and then to take it one step further, just beyond the macro perspective, at Universal, just so I give like a space address between the Earth, the solar system, the galaxy, and then the Milky Way. But there's something that's broken in between. I just saw a small piece of something, some work of Dr. Stephen Greer. Um, and offset his works and his documentation. And then I'm looking to this, not that I want to give this author like really all of this glorious credit, but it's a piece of the work that I'm using in order to offset. Like, I know I'm not crazy. I knew I wasn't crazy when I was a kid, and I would wake up with these incredible stories of my future and what was being shown to me by these beings, that I had to then like come back to this reality, awaken from a sleep state, and then try to explain to the high school graduates with very low vocabulary, for lack of better words, and I myself not having this extensive, elaborate education. Um, and knowing when I would close my eyes and I would drift to sleep, and it would bring me somewhere into this fold, and then I'd come back to my body and have to explain to the human Judy, who's the only one who would participate with me like that. Um, and she was she was an American. She was a flower, an American flower. I don't know if there was a problem with me napping at my grandfather's house, because technically he wasn't. I mean, he was brought over or into this, and he was still my blood relative, but Judy was the American. She's the one who has the Iowa whatever, but she was flowered in New York. Um, so, and then I'm thinking to myself, I watched an episode of Star Trek, which I don't normally watch because, again, their crews, like the way how to, like, really, they really messied up this. And then I'm thinking to myself, at monetary system, which I've shown several times, as that's what the federal note in the United States of America has approved. I'm going off of that context, and I see, and I've snapped photos of, for my own homeland security, pictures in my airspace of beings that are calling themselves a U.S. senator. I took out this book. It turns out, in this small juvenile book, only thing I know about the man that they refer to as John Glenn with two N's, is what's held in this book. I don't have a private investigatory file. I don't know what he did on his private hour. He's just a godfather of aerospace, or like Godspeed John Glenn. These are the approved words that they used. But they refer to him as when as a senator. And I'm like, how did he get to be a senator? Because like these were not words that were actively spoken of in the schools that I went to. And I feel like I really was very unprepared for life. And then I'm thinking in that, which is what I used to be so frightened of as a child. And then I'm thinking of this. So they moved me to this place. They put me in this Red Cross that was St. John's. And then they had me living residence at Glen, but with one N, in this little enclave of a whaling town, an old whaling village, and not opulent. Like I was not living in 22-foot ceilings, um, although part of the residence did cathedral the ceilings. Um, but for the most part, it was like humble beginnings. And then, according to Star Trek, they say the replicator. I mean, my replicator in quantum mechanics at like quark level and at the master machine, my replicator produced on like in perfect system, which I know has incredible meaning. So, but I have not been celebrated, nor has the child that I brought forth. And with my ability and capability at machine mechanics that know precisely every calculation in calcaneus calculus before the calcaneus arrive in order to do whatever is done. And I'm like, why was it so mishandled? And I know how confusing it is once your calcaneus enters the calculus with like, I mean, it's almost like support was completely. And then I'm thinking like, this man, his birthday is July 18th, and he arrived in the 1920s. And I'm thinking to myself, now how do I anchor that in time and space? I was like, so he was delivered 718. I was like, that's my area code. And then there's hidden gems of Glen Cove, Glen Hills. Like there's Glen in the green signage, but he's not celebrated anywhere. And then I go to the U.S. Naval Cadets or Sea Cadets for my son, the last one, because I don't hear John Glenn's name ever mentioned, like never, ever, ever. And he seems to have had this really incredible story, and he seems to be an incredible part of the U.S. history, and he's part of the like upper echelon in space programs where like it's such a rarity. I mean, I'm a rare flower on my own in this story, in this area, but I'm wondering, why is he not being celebrated? He's not being taught in schools his name, like my sons, which look like perhaps maybe kind of sort of like, they don't even in this book, they don't even say where his origins are from other than Ohio. But in New York, people that look like John Glenn and myself, like my children, are not being taught about any of the Mercury 7. Like John is one of 7, or 1 plus 6 in the Mercury 7, which I'm just learning now. I'm in the area code of 718. I went to this USC Cadets by accident. I just happened upon it. And they're only because I started speaking with the factory level, like whoever's working facility, they happened to bring me into a room. It was not the focal point. I saw a really handsome gentleman. I said, who is that? Because it wasn't labeled. And he said, oh, that's John Glenn. And I'm like, now what was he part of? Because I didn't have the book. And he like didn't really go into like, he's not really celebrated on Long Island. But yet he's one of 7 with the U.S. Navy, it says in the book. It also mentions the Marines. So he had a Navy and a Marine career with the U.S. He was one of seven. He got to go up in outer orbit, and he looks like he's part, well, they call him a US senator, and he's part of my US Treasury monetary system. But yet the like, again, I mean, like extended genetics of people that look like this in my life frame are there. My history with him included in it, which seems really important, has been almost taken from us. It's not being taught. Like, my sons don't. I just said to Alex, now Alex is that exact inside the Hadron Collider of smashing particles for nuclear science and nuclear family and how connections and life on this planet exist and all sorts of other technology that they don't speak about. He and I have a significance in clocks. I don't know what else other words to use, but I am very frightened that Alex and I have no idea who this man was if I didn't get this book and if I didn't start on this journey to try to figure out how to get my last son into something while I'm suffering now, like with some form of um, there's some it's almost like a blood poisoning. Like, I don't really know how to explain it. Part toxic environment, part all sorts of different things. And I'm just like, so they're not teaching about John Glenn or any of the other six in New York. Not one. In fact, I had to go into the John Glenn book in order to find out what the other six names are, because I don't even know who they are. It turns out Robert Goddard, Giant Science, he's not one of them either. They're not teaching any of this stuff. My kids are not being geared towards engineering. Nothing about aerodynamics is even spoken. Again, like, I would even astrophysics or even physics itself, I wouldn't even know how to find this level of science and career level. It's not, who is it being offered to? I mean, if he's like forefather of aerodynamics, engineering, and aerospace for North America with this NASA, which is the agency, why are people like myself who are kind of in the colony that's in New York, like, again, then it speaks about staging within the rocket industry and like getting ready, like, to land in the ocean. I'm like, why is there like this pullback? Why was, like, I mean, he was chosen and he was given such an opportunity. Why are the focal points of the charity and the schooling given in New York, why is it being given and driven towards non-North Americans? Like, if he's a US senator, like, North American, and I'm like arm's reach in that genetic pool, why am I being held back and harmed and all like information? And then with what's moved into the area between like Aunt Virginia's generation, which is my mother's aunt, and then my generation, and now my son's generation, like, even the ancestry and the ability to access our own history, and like the as a role model, like, there's no book reports, like, they're not even gearing them, like. And then what is the pool of students that my son is even being offered in the public arena? I mean, he was a public figure. Why are the ancestors, and why is he not being, and then to go to like a US naval something in this 718, like, geared towards his birthday, it's celebrating, but nobody says that. I only happened upon the facts in the book that it's 718. I'm like, I'm in a 718 area code. Then I look at other US posts, like the US postal system, and I see that the local truck drivers in New York look like pirates from continent Africa. And then I go into the American Armor Museum, and there's a tank with 718 on it, which I took a picture of my son in front of it, along with his picture in front of Teddy Roosevelt, which is also an American armor, like our US history, because I see things almost like identity theft, trying to posture themselves as US senators in New York. And I'm like, I took a photo of it. I'm like, he is not a US senator. There is no way that man, John Glenn was a US senator. Biden was a senator. But what the man on the TV in New York is not a senator. And then there's another guy in Bayside. He's got dispensary eyes. I mean, that's the local publication from Bayside Times. They call it dispensary eyes. And I'm like, and he doesn't look very John Glenn North American either. But he's what's on the front cover of the newspaper publication. And I'm just like, why is there nobody speaking about John Glenn and his significance as one of 7? I'm in 1 star of 50 in the Stripes and Stars, if that's like a Shroud of Project, and John Glenn was 1 of 7. Why are these things not active? And why do I have such a hard time finding employment, like fixed income? I just want a fixed income participating portion, and I'm not even being offered that. And at the same time, all the contributions he's made, and God only knows what they require of them. And then I go to church to listen to the canon lawyer or the canon law, and they're trying to do charity. Like, I mean, he in his good faith, like that's the thing, is that like he's a good, generous person. I can tell. He wants to do good. He's out there. He's trying to do something for the church. There's this homeless shelter for women, and he's up on the pulpit trying to gain support. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, he's like, I want to help Father Carl in Father Carl's mission, but I don't know who's pulling the strings behind Father Carl. I'm frightened. I'm frightened when I go in, and like, why are they moving people in? What kind of message? Who are they supporting? What's the political driver behind the city sending a like women's shelter into the area, full of homeless women? And I'm like, again, like going from nano to micro to macro to beyond macro and then back down again. I'm like, I'm not being celebrated. And I have a special bonded birth in like spirituality terms at like Royal Naval level. Maybe they would understand. But why at this US level is there such like a retreat of even teaching Anthony about like who he should be reaching for, who the men that paved the way, like his forefathers, like who they were as guiders, as mentors, as something to reach and aspire to. Like, not even that level of education is being offered to my children. And it's like it's I don't know. It's just, and it's in the system, and it's getting worse and worse, and they're busing in migrants. And I'm like, and he's up there today at the pulpit, and he's saying, he's like, something about this woman's advocating for her child, and he's like, why are you feeding dogs? Something along those lines. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I have to go back to my roots. If I was at John Glenn level and I had sponsorship, I had fixed income, I had a mission, I had a purpose, I had a backing, then I would be bound to whatever that is for making decisions. But at this point, they've starved me and my children for education, for guidance, for leadership, for fellowship, for whatever. And they're asking to give everything away. How can you give what you don't have? I wasn't given, but yet they want to keep giving away. So who at U.S. Treasury is giving to these people. That's what I don't understand. And so Father Carl was very clear in some bond that there is with Israel, which again, these are like the men battles. Like these are not like, I don't feel like these are women battles. These are the battles the men had. But like I don't know at what generation the men were having these battles to keep the women out of it. So I'm like, who bonded? And then Lewis tells me the other day, he says something about the Egyptians at some point fired the Italians and went in some other direction. And I'm like, what does that mean, Lewis? Like, I don't even know what that means. Like, what does that mean for me and my children? Like, I mean, like, who do you support in all of this? I mean, and then I watched this movie Tom Cruise was in about called The Firm. And I'm like, right, that looks like something like a Lewis Linda. Like, that's what I was expecting, was like a meeting of someone American respectable, and then to have like the house, the job, the whatever aligned for us at fixed income with fixed expectations, and then this fixed part of like where to support, where not to support. But that was never even offered or given. So now I'm just floating out here in the universe by myself, and my replicator's working, and I have this really important child and feature. But now it's like, there's no bond. I mean, there's some symbols of what is or what was or what still exists, but it's frightening as to why is it happening this way, and why are they suggesting taking on all of the, and then I see drug cartels, I see that they're muling in drugs and poisoning the children, and I'm just like, what, like, who's funding all of this? And why, if these are the great American, North American ancestors and the history that established these great communication lines, why is all of that now all of a sudden at like some staging for what? um so I am really like, the more I'm looking for work and the more I listen, I just, where's the future taking us? I'm in the machine, but I'm in the machine in this really precarious position where like I'm looking at other people's theories at an 8977, because I don't necessarily want to attach with, I don't know who this illustrator is, I don't know who this author is, but it is a publication from the Queen's Library, same one where they still have books on John Glenn. But when I go into the same library, they have other books that don't even have this language. It's other symbols inside the library, and big sections of them. And I'm just like, it just seems like there's this fight for the designated 718 area code, and I don't understand why, and I don't understand how to protect it. Best way I can say is, where did my local, regional, and long distance phone carrier go in the 718 area code? Because there seems to be a larger disruption at carrier, and I don't understand why. But I know what our historical allowance and who built it. He's one of 7 that built it in the 1 of 50 for stars. And then I had a replicator as flower to replicating unit in symmetrical whatever. But I don't, I'm searching for signs of the history that exists, the public front that we're allowed to know, because so much has been withheld from my person, and I don't know why. Um, and then I look at Disney, like Disney 1950s, all the Disney princesses were painted one way for purpose. It was the same space race. It was the same communications project. And then all of a sudden, like, I arrive, and then the princesses are like change. I don't understand how that happened. I'm not all right with it. Um, that seems really dangerous. Like, how do you protect your ancestry? How do you protect your own? How do you protect? Because again, like, it's not like I arrived to such abundance and so much opportunity. I've been hunted here. I've been hurt here. I'm still like, I can't even get the level of medical care that somebody as a founding father like should have, especially since they're letting in non-founder children and they're taking care of them, but yet I'm not even getting that level of care. So there's some serious stuff that's wrong and off, and I don't know how to like honor the ancestors that came before me for my sons and children's sake and my sake, and to preserve our history. Um, but there is some serious struggle that's not being openly spoken about between something that I'm labeling as dispensary eyes, only because it's very prominently here and so overtly trying to gain ground in like land mass area, and I don't even know where else. But it's a concern, because like when I think of microbiotics on a petri dish and then in the gross anatomy of a human flesh being, when there's cells, healthy cells, they make a tissue. If somebody injects that healthy tissue with some mutated cell that then starts some necrotic reaction or some necrosis, that is a problem. And people actively try not to have mutated necrotic cells injected into their own personal tissue. I don't know why public safety and national security doesn't hold that standard and that level in Queens and in the 718 area code. I'm really struggling with, why is there so much introduction of alternate cells, mutated cells, into an area that had a perfectly healthy tissue and cell count? Why were necrotic cells inserted into this perfectly healthy tissue in like in 718 area code for 1 out of 7 inside of a 1 of 50? It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole Cattaruzza. And at a 8977, I guess that I would be the AIGH. An alternate to AIGH is it's AIGH and HCGH. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken. And it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 1361. Linda and Lou still have a 718 area code telephone number. I don't think they're issuing 718 anymore. I don't know why that's been taken away as well, but they still are grandfathered in for their 718 area code for their telephone line.